Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Black Book Podcast. Here we have another bonus episode entitled Because of Slavery, featuring a guest, one of my best friends, Elsie Marie Green, with her topic talking how the dozens came from slavery.
Well, I was thinking about, your subject is because of slavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I understand it correctly, we're talking about some of the social norms in the Black community in America, in particular, that are that come from the culture that was bred in us through the tragedies we experienced during slavery.
Yes.
And a lot of our cultural personality and ways and traditions are today because of slavery. So I was thinking about something that we do often anywhere you go in Black America. We've heard about it from our parents and grandparents. We do it in our generation, and our kids will probably do it too. And that is where I was growing up. The name has changed over the years, and forgive me if I'm not getting to the point. I'm just building up on it.
No, it's okay.
The name has changed over the years. I think, in different parts of the country, it's different, but the practice is still the same. And there's actually television shows that have been born from it, and whole pop culture movements that have come out of this activity, this practice that we engage in, that comes straight out of the hood. And that it's been called dissing, it's been called sigging, snapping, playing the dozens, jonesing, yo mama, and I think that's all I can think of.
Roasting, flaming,
Roasting, flaming,
burning. Many names.
And I'm pretty sure this new generation, not that I'm in touch, because I'm not, but I'm pretty sure this new generation might adopt the phrase "wilding out," since that is the television show that has become so famous behind the practice that came out of our culture. As a matter of fact, I believe I heard Nick Cannon say that he got the idea for the show out of what's so normal and natural to us as normal, natural people. We're natural comedians in that sense. So, he actually gave credit to the practice. Now, I want to understand from you, because you and I grew up in similar parts of the country, but they still have their own individual cultures, and we grew up in different times. I'm a little older than you, just a tiny. What do you understand? Just a little son. I'm old enough to be your auntie, your big cousin. I want to, for people who might listen from other parts of the world who aren't, in touch with Black American culture. What is that? What's sigging, dissing, roasting? What is it to you? How would you describe it?
All of those words, they basically have the same meaning, which is just going back and forth with your brother, with your sister, with your cousin, with your friends, right? And basically talking about each other and what a person who is outside of our culture might see as hurtful. And sometimes in real life it does get hurtful. But when I was growing up, and I'm still kind of growing, I'm 27 years old, but I can't say that I'm fully where I want to be. But when I was a child, it was fun. It didn't really mean anything to anyone. After we would do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, a couple of hours, right? Even to the point where maybe you said something in the morning, and then your brother and sister came back at you at the afternoon. You know what I'm saying? Got back at you.
Now I want to understand. I'm gonna interrupt you for a second, because I want to give the most realistic picture of what this thing was. Were you saying when we sing, when we diss, when we play the dozens, were we saying stuff to each other that was like, "Oh, your hair looks nice today. You look lovely"?
No.
Can you give me an example of stuff we were saying, what you might have heard, or something you might have said? Because I'm sure you did it. You didn't come at me a couple times, and I had to get you straight. Tried to read me a couple times, I had to put your back down in your face. I throw a whole
Yeah,
shade tree.
that's. I think that's the most recent name is throwing shade. Now
Throwing
that I can
shade. Now, when
throwing
I was
shade.
coming up, to be honest with you, I grew up in Michigan, and when I was coming up, that's what we said.
Okay,
Now it's being, this is a whole nother conversation, but now it's being attributed to gay culture. When I was growing up in the West Coast, we in the East Coast, we didn't know gay people, but we said red, we said throwing shade, we said all of that. Why you throwing shade? We said, oh, you got red. Oh, she got you red. And it was, go ahead though. I interrupted you. What would those things be?
so for example, like let's take a typical your mama joke, right? Which is something that everybody does, right? Even like siblings who have the same mother would still partake in your mama jokes. For example, like this is a corny one, but it might get under someone's skin or entice a conversation or a session. Some people might say, which is like, "Oh, your mama's so broke, she stole free bread," or something like that. Like, "Oh, your mama's so stupid, she stole free bread," depending on where you are. And that's kind of like, and we would go back
Yep.
and forth, right?
And
So if
I,
somebody said that, and then go, "Oh, your mama's so fat, she sit on the whole bench," some shit like that.
something like that, right? But
Yeah,
as we've gotten older, those become less entertaining and we start to become more personal, right?
yes, it
So when we
does.
get a little bit older, we were a little bit younger, we said the yo mama jokes. And as we got a little bit older, those became less entertaining and they
Mhm.
became a little bit more personal, right?
Right.
So, and mind you, I want to just point out that this always had a comedic thing. The whole point was to make people laugh. Not you, not your person you were talking about, but everybody else had to be laughing at your target because of what you said. So it wasn't okay to just say, "Oh, you got on ugly lipstick." It's got to be like something like, "Your lipstick's so ugly, it looked like it was made from a bee's knees." I
Mm-hmm.
obviously didn't participate in this action much. I didn't have to. If I read somebody, it was dirty. It was, it was like, yep, that's your mama suck dick and smoke crack. Why are you talking about me? Like, I would just shut it down. I never really got into the funny stuff, you
Right.
know. But that was a form of it as well, where I came from, just like slaughtering somebody. Like, I saw your mama suck the dick behind 7-Eleven. What the fuck you talking about my shoes for?
Yeah.
You know.
And
But I was talking about how it got a little bit more personal.
mm, and I was gonna say like because you mentioned
Go
like how it has to be funny and things like that, and so like the most memorable people or the most memorable lines are always the funniest ones, right? And so like um I remember these are just like where most of our comedians come up. Actually, they come up playing the dozens or flaming each other, and then like people actually find out like this kid is actually really funny. You can actually make money off this, and so they take their talents into a nightclub,
Right.
or in the '80s they went to New York and went into the Apollo, and and they blew up. Yeah, that's what I had to say.
Yeah, I mean, it has turned into an entire change. It not only became something we did in our culture, and we'll talk about exactly where it came from because this segment is called "Because of Slavery."
Hmm.
But it was not only something we did at home and in our neighborhoods and at the barbershop and maybe in the parking lot outside of church, but it became an industry. And it became something where a person who could do it well and not even be talking about somebody in the room, just hypothetically talking about somebody, could take this talent on a stage and make millions of dollars. And kind of what I want to talk about tonight is how that's affected our image
Mm.
as a people and our relationship. But first, I want to talk about where it came from. And because this segment is called Because of Slavery, that's an easy guess, right? It did come from slavery. Now, I had some ideas that it had, you guess, if you knew it came from slavery, but you didn't know exactly what the circumstances were, what would you guess were maybe some of the circumstances that spawned this culture?
uh if I knew it came from slavery, but I had to find if I didn't know the circumstances, what would I guess? Just
What would you
slaves looking out for their own interest. And so them having to tell massa or the head slave, the house slave, about somebody else, and and to make it sound worse, they would do things that make it sound funny, or whatever, to get the spotlight off them so they can fly under the radar
Mm.
and do whatever. um that's usually how it that's and like that's usually how it
Oh.
goes.
So as a form of snitching? Mhm.
Probably a form of snitching, but like, in this day and age, it's not really snitching. It's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's not. I don't take it as snitching. I just take it as people trying to be funny.
I mean, and what people trying to say that part one more time. People trying to.
I wouldn't say that it was snitching. I said I think it's just people trying to be funny.
Oh, okay, okay. So let me share with you, and I'm gonna jump off camera for a second while I grab this piece, and I'll send it to you if you have a way to like put it on the screen for your people. I got this article. I did a little quick Google search, and I'll give you the link to my search. I'll drop that in the chat when we're done, because there's actually a little bit of resources that talk about the history. Now, Urban Dictionary defines dozens. It says playing the dozens is an African American custom in which two competitors, usually males, go head to head. And it goes further and gives a little bit more information about the circumstances. But I found this article that was really most interesting because it contained a quote. Now the article's from the Baltimore Sun, and I did drop a link to that in the chat, so you can share that with your listeners as well, so that they can get more information. But there was someone named Ossie Guffey. Who wrote an autobiography in 1971. And this article in the Baltimore Sun says Ossie Gussie, in her 1971 autobiography, recounted her grandfather's lecture. He told her that the slaves played the dozens, but it wasn't for fun. They was playing to teach themselves and their sons how to stay alive, she wrote, quoting her grandfather. The whole idea was to learn to take whatever the master said to you without answering back or hitting him, because that was the way a slave had to be, so as he could go on living. It maybe was a bad game, but it was necessary. It ain't
Hmm.
necessary now. So tell me what you think about that.
That makes sense. Mm, I mean, we do know that slave owners and masters and whatever, who was ever the head of the labor part in the slave on the slave plantation, they would say whatever they wanted to say to slaves, right? And they would slap them, they would beat them, and things like this. And we are human. Slaves are human. It's not like all of the slaves were very obedient. They had to learn to be obedient so that they can keep on
Mhm.
living, so that they can survive this, right?
Mhm.
And so clearly they
Mhm.
did. So it does make sense for them to create a system of knowing how to control their anger, control just their natural human a natural human reaction to someone saying something to you that does not fit with you very well, right? Like that. Like nowadays, we do this all the time to people when someone says something that does something doesn't that doesn't fit with your core values. We cancel them. We don't say, "Oh, we don't fuck with that person no
Mhm.
more," things like that. But
Yep.
slaves didn't have the privilege to do this shit. So they had to take it,
Mhm.
and they had to learn how to take it. And it wasn't just they had to sit there; they had to practice it. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Mhm. Now, see, I was concerned about us having this low view of each other
Mm.
because we have incorporated this practice into our culture. But after reading this, I became more concerned about the fact that we've learned how to shut up and take it.
Mm. Maybe
It's
that's
so
just a
layered.
byproduct. Is that a byproduct of what's happened? What's
So like what do we do? Like if we know that this has a toxic root, Is this a situation where we say, well, it's like the word, the N word? I think you and I both agree. I'll speak for you and say, it's a word we say. They better not. When we say it to each other, it don't mean that. If we ever said it to each other like that, we'd have a problem. But we
Mhm.
ain't never said it to each other like that, and we wouldn't. So we ain't gonna stop saying it because we say it, but we don't want to teach our babies to say it.
Mm.
So, like, I use the N word as an example because it's a popular conversation most people are familiar with. And I want to relate that to this same thing where we hear a version of the root cause. Now, nobody's saying that's the etymology, that's the base, but this is somebody's grandfather's account
Mhm.
of
This is a
his
theory.
experience.
Yeah.
It's a theory, and it's a workable one
Mhm.
because it makes sense. And I never thought that that was the root of it. I thought that the reason why we dissed and sigged on each other, we called it sigging in my day. The reason why we sigged on each other was because we learned that if we talk bad about each other, we could protect each other because massa wouldn't take our friends and family away.
Mm.
Because I heard that the reason why, and this is another because of slavery, maybe to come. So I don't want to spoil it if it's something you're working on. But I heard that the roots of women, Black women, and how we discipline our children comes from slavery, of course, and it
Mm.
has this same kind of root as I thought what this came from. But what I'm finding is that we literally practice shut up and take it, and I'm still trying to figure out when it became funny.
Mm.
Because we talk bad about each other, man. It's so normal. Like I saw this post on Instagram today that was like, lock your doors because niggas steal. Because niggas this. Because niggas this. And I'm like, why is this normal? For Black people to share this kind of stuff about Black people? But now I'm like, wait a minute. We literally taught ourselves, and they say, the best slaves don't have to be in shackles and they'll teach their children. We literally taught ourselves how to numb ourselves to the pain and keep from reacting as mammals do when our lives are at risk. You don't never see a Black man get beat by police and that motherfucker fight back. Name one. When we get in situations with authority, we comply right away. We know exactly what to do. I negotiated with the police to let me get in the car. I was like, you ain't got to do all this because it was four of them trying to get me in a police car and I wasn't budging. I'm a solid bitch. They couldn't move me. I said, let me go. I'll get in myself. And then I thought back and I was like, why the fuck was I even willing to get in that motherfucking car? Yeah, we gonna fight. That's what I should have been like. Yeah, we gonna fight. I ain't getting in this bitch because it's not normal and it's not natural.
Mm.
But I negotiated with them on a way that I could comply.
Mm.
A police officer caught me fucking some shit up during an uprising, and I got on the ground. He didn't even tell me to. I did it on my own. Where did I get that from? I ain't never been in that kind of encounter before. Why did I know to get on the ground on face down and put my hands behind my back? Who taught me that? Where did that come from? And this kind of implement in our culture, as fun as it is, as entertaining as it is, it might be part of what's keeping us bound.
Mm.
Because the way we have turned from figuring out ways to protect ourselves for survival to figuring out ways to insult, demean, and undermine each other in
Mhm.
ways that will garner support from our community and tear somebody down right in front of us. And it's a show, it's an industry. And we let white folks come in and do it to us, and we laugh when they do. White boy got at him, didn't he?
Hmm.
Now I'm not gonna stop. I'm not gonna stop watching this shit. I mean, I still listen to R. Kelly. I like good music.
No, that is a great topic. Wow, like that makes me think about so much, and I wish we had more time so we can talk about more, because that particular topic goes into so much.
Hmm.
And you're right. Like I have been in talks with people about the way not just black women, us as black people raise and discipline our children, and things like this. So I don't want to talk too much about it because it may or may not happen. And if it does happen, I want that to be a full episode because that's going to be
Well,
great
we
topic.
even do it to our children. Look at the nicknames we give our kids. I'm just gonna touch on this for a hot second. My daddy grew up with a dude named Shit Stain Shorty. Ain't nobody love that boy.
Mm.
Go ahead.
Mm. That's crazy.
Go ahead.
I mean, I grew up with a name. I grew up with a name. They used to call me Doodoo. I've never told anyone. I've never. This is the first time I've ever told someone this publicly. I hate that fucking name because I was a
And
child. I was
who loved
literally
you
a
enough to
baby.
call you? Somebody was literally calling you feces.
I was a child. I was still in diapers when I got this name, and I'll tell you why I got the name. It was because I was a child, still in diapers because I needed them. It wasn't like I was like 4 or 5 years old. I was like literally 6 months, a month, a year, 2 years old. Like still in diapers.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and my family, my siblings would say like, "Oh, we called you Doodle because you would shit so much." And I'm going, "That's what." But that's what children do. They eat and then they shit and then they do it all over again. I mean, like, it doesn't make any sense to give me this name. I talked to my brother about this before because all of my brothers.
Said it doesn't make any sense to give me this
It
name. He gave
doesn't
me a whole name behind
all.
something that people do. Everybody poops.
So like my grandfather was notorious for giving everybody in our family nicknames, right? Most people had like good names based off things they were good at, or things that that made them distinctive in the family and stuff like this. So like I had a brother, his nickname is Speedy because he's really fast. Yeah. And my another brother's his name is Dude because he's always like the tough guy, so they call him Dude, and things like that. So like, and everybody else got the other nickname, but then I got fucking Doodoo, which is like crazy. Like,
It's like
just
your
crazy.
other cousin got dude. He got doo doo, which is spelled differently, so it's pronounced
No,
a little
it's not.
different. D U D
And
E.
and
It's
I tell my
doo
family
duh.
to this day, there's still some family members to this day. I'm 27 years old. Family members to this day will try and call me Doodoo. I said, and I look at them in a straight face. Call me that shit again. Call me Doodoo again. We're gonna fucking move this furniture around. I'm so serious about that shit. That is the most embarrassing fucking name in the world.
Oh God. See, so you understand what I'm saying? Like, here's something you dealing with 30 years later because of slavery. I wanted to actually, I know we don't have no more time, but if we did, I would have actually gone over some of the examples that I was given. Some of
Well,
them are kind of funny,
give me one more and then we'll
but
go. Just give me one. Give me one.
let me see. Let me see. Let me find a good one. Hold on. So let's see. And that article again is called Dozens is Oral Legacy Rooted in Survival by Gregory Lewis. It was published on February 11, 1994. Um, let me see. Let me find a good one for you. It says, I remember hearing this one too. Your mother, I'm gonna say it with like a good old Queen's accent. No, Brooklyn. Your mother's arms are so hairy when she walks down the street, it looks like she has buckwheat in a headlock, son.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Brooklyn. Forgive me, Brooklyn.
That was a pretty nice Brooklyn accent.
But that was a good one. It was good. It was a good accent. You liked
I
it?
think so. Yeah.
That's all I got. I ain't got much.
Okay.
But
Well,
yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about this.
me too. I'm so glad. And don't worry, we're gonna have you on again because I know you got lots to say.
Oh.
We have lots to say. And so let's just end it right here. So for everyone who doesn't know, this is Elsie. I'm EC, and this is the Black Book Podcast.